The summer we rode the rattling bus to grandmother's farm sits in my bones like a sun-warm stone. The days began with the rasp of the coffee grinder and the soft shove of the screen door as it answered the day with a sigh. The kitchen smelled of sourdough and warm milk, of peaches left to ripen on the sill, and a pot of tea that always tasted of the road and the dust that clung to our shoes. Grandmother moved like a quiet, necessary tide, her hands measuring out flour and patience with the same steady rhythm she had for years. Outside, the air hung heavy with the green of corn and the soft, distant creak of a fence that had learned every weather it could endure. The world on that hill felt large and safe, as if it had been listening to every whisper we breathed and kept it all in its pocket. In the afternoons, after the chores repeated themselves like a measured drumbeat, we would spill into the yard or wander down to the old orchard where the grass laid itself out in flat, inviting strips. I remember the light there as if it were a warm liquid poured over the fields. The sun not harsh, but generous, slanting through leaves with the patient insistence of a mother coaxing a child to nap. The river beyond the meadow kept its own quiet counsel, a line of silver that never hurried, no matter how many boats cut across its surface. It is funny now how something as simple as a river can feel like a teacher, but back then I felt taught by its glints and sighs, as if it spoke in shorthand to the soul. One evening, when the heat and the day's bread dust had finally settled, we slipped past the barn as the world started to loosen its grip on the day. The air smelled of damp earth and sweet grass, and the cicadas began their own hymn, a chorus of patient, persistent sound that could have been woven into a blanket. We carried a jar, wide-mouthed and clumsy in our small hands, the sort of jar that shivers slightly when you cup it. The plan was simple. Capture a glow. Fireflies, those patient little lanterns, flickered in and out of the dusk like tiny, stubborn stars, but had decided to take a seat on our valley. We crouched by the patch of clover beside the fence, the jar resting on a palm-swept knee, the lid in the other hand. My cousin whispered that we must not trap them too long, that a light should always be free to blink away when it ought. Grandmother stood a little way off on the edge of the yard, her shadow long and soft, a quiet lesson in steadiness. She did not hurry us, did not chide our laughter when it burst out in quick, bright bursts. She simply watched with that serene patience that felt like mercy. And there, in the hush that followed a especially calm blink of dusk, the field opened up in a way I had not known an ordinary field could. Though I suspect every ordinary field holds some secret entire universe if you look long enough. A single glow rose and hovered, a pale greenish yellow, and for a moment the world narrowed to that small, beating light in my grasp. It trembled on the glass. A sentient thing that did not mind being contained so gently. I had never realized a light could feel like tenderness. I had never guessed a jar could cradle a universe without hurting it. The glow pulsed, then settled, and I understood what the light meant to be kept, the responsibility it carried to not burn itself out, to not blink away without a choice. I learned in that breath of amber dusk that light does not demand to be kept. You choose to keep it because you want to see more slowly, to see with intention rather than haste. We released a couple of the brighter ones when the jar grew heavy in my hands, and they drifted up in soft, lazy spirals, still bright, still free. I watched the last one settle on a blade of grass. And then a wind rose with the scent of rain and corn and something sweet I cannot name now, perhaps the promise of a future's small, ordinary blessings. That night when we returned to the porch with still buzzing ears and the world just now learning to blur at the edges, grandmother spoke softly about the quiet power of small things. "If you want the day to remember you," she said, "not as a rule, but as guidance, you must learn to hold on without squeezing." Her gaze rested on the chink of light left under the door, the tiny speck of evening that found its way through the screen. We ate cornbread and honey with our hands, and the room grew warmer with each bite, as if the kitchen itself leaned closer to listen. In the months that followed, those evenings by the fence and the river and the firefly jar stitched themselves into the texture of who I would become. I learned that life did not demand drama to be meaningful. It asked for patience. I grew up in the shade of summers like that one, and though the farm has changed in the years since, I still hear the river's patient whisper when I stand at a kitchen sink or when the house settles into its evening sigh. The older I become, the more I see how that youthful wish to trap a moment in glass was really a longing to hold on to a certain gentleness, the ability to cradle a fragile thing and still set it free when the time is right. That is the memory that formed my compass, the insistence that the world is wide enough for both wonder and restraint, that a life may be bright without being loud, that love often arrives in the quiet, unguarded hours rather than in grand public declarations. Now, in the rooms of an old house that remembers more people than it can name, I keep a little jar on a high shelf, empty except for the memory of light. People ask why I keep it, and I tell them of a summer when a girl and a boy learned the slow magic of holding and letting go, of the way a kitchen could become a sanctuary, and of the sound of cicadas that taught me to listen to the long, patient stories of others. The jar is not a treasure, not a trophy, but a reminder that world remains generous to those who learn to be gentle with its tiny illuminations. To be old is to keep company with days that wore themselves into gold around the edges, to recognize the shape of a moment and know that it did not vanish but travelled inward, changing the rhythm of the heart. The faces of that summer, the grandmother with her soft, practical wisdom, the cousin's wide grin, the scent of bread rising in the oven, the river's steady gleam, are not gone. They are here, tucked into the memory's quiet brightness, reminding me that life was not only lived, but remembered in a way that makes life afterward possible. If I am asked what matters, I would say this: the world is full of small, patient miracles if you learn to look. The long days of summer taught me to look with care, to find the glow in ordinary things, to honour the fragility and aliveness of every moment I am given. Time will pass, and people will drift away like leaves in a slow current, but meaning does not disappear. It is kept. If we keep paying attention, the way a firefly's glow lingers in the jar's glass after the lid is closed, the way a grandmother's voice lingers in a kitchen's warmth, the way a child's laughter lingers in a memory that refuses to fade. And so I carry that memory forward, not as a trophy, but as a map. It guides me to be present where I am, to listen, to touch gently, to offer what light I have to others while I still can hold it. I am grateful for the summers that taught me to see, to wait, and to love the ordinary with a patient, steady heart. Time may pass, but meaning endures.